Go ahead and enlarge it. Okay, I would like to introduce to you a friend of mine. This is Mrs. Bitsui, and she is Navajo, and she is from Ganada in Arizona, and she is going to help me read this book, The Little Woman Warrior Who Came Home. I'll be reading the portion in English, and she will be reading the portion in Navajo. Okay, the title of the book, go ahead and start. The Little Woman Warrior Who Came Home, a story of the Navajo Long Walk. You think your grandma was kidnapped when this happened? Generation. Okay, so when we start talking about things like even, yeah, I did not know that. So thank you for sharing it. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this side. Okay, I'm not going to read this whole thing. Okay, move it up so I'm going to have to have it where I can see it on the screen. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Sapit ata toba slatin toba haska ita tahot itla asanan long ya setla saya bahane adon le setla change bit shila ado bisha ya bishi paila ado di etike ya na be hohat ado inda ista shikanagi shi sto padloto listo Ishin hata ya biji palia biji paila ado asam pa anegi ya late ti the saneligi beyond that shin hot ado le La Plata Mountain Horia Adon Le Safta beautiful Mount Taylor Adonana the west is Majestic San Francisco Peak Adon North Mount Persis Adon San Bahanagi Ahuyani Salela Iti Bahanagi Ado in the le Kahoshi is an hour Ado Shin Ale Haji Ado Bama Echi Hollow Ado Bijato Ishin larger Bohadni Jeme Ado Bitsele Do Benashi Do Hollow Ado Bikeda Holola Ado Shido Asahina Wada Jene. In 1856, a girl given the name yeah, I wasn't even going to try it. Was born at the base of Black Mesa. Her father named her Little Woman Warrior Who Came Home because he knew that the Navajo had many enemies. Her family called her how do you say it? The family lived on land that was surrounded by 4 sacred mountains. Far to the east were the great La Plata Mountains. Far to the south was the beautiful Mount Taylor. Nearer to her home in the west were the majestic San Francisco peaks. And in the far north sat great Mount Hesperus. As grew older, the mountains kept watch over her and her family. Thank you. Mother was quiet but strong woman, and her father was a warrior leader. Had 2 older brothers and no sisters. Many relatives lived nearby, so she was never alone. Yeah. Let me introduce this son right here. I want there's only a bit it's Ashbelia. Ashkida she had other bagan lady. Dadel Katleya. Dadel Katleten. For the ever caught the ya did.
Ishin be chow or Nana de ya possession that question cost target. Aro de ya charge. Ishin pamata. De saba hanege de.
Okay. And what's pretty neat is that she will be able to, this will be able to be recorded so that young children who speak Navajo will be able to understand the story. And that was the longest page, by the way, that first one that we read. Okay, if you do a paragraph, then I'll do a paragraph. Okay.
Saba hanege. Yo, yo, bahane. Ado, ishin de hisa shikanegi. Ya, belakana shita. Bathroom hikajine. Ishin, the Bayazidor, these are the sheep, the lamb, the sheep.
Mhm.
And then there's also the Bayazidor, Ebe the Hotlala, Asian other Bizarre, young, Asian Tassim is not Wasa, the Pamato, and they got the Benes, Asian had in top.
So is that, this is the same as what you're saying?
Yeah, this is what
And
I'm
then she's
saying.
translating it.
Yeah.
Okay, so say her name for me again, please. Disbahanas.
Yeah.
Happy childhood ended suddenly when some U.S. troops came to her family's hogan. Dibahana was all alone with the little lambs and goats. Her father had gone to meet with other war leaders, and her mother had left to gather juniper berries.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can see in the story.
Yeah. So these are the troops. Asian Malakana, the white people.
The cavalry that came in.
Yeah.
Zabahana was afraid of the troops. She tried to hide, but became so frightened that she ran toward the juniper trees in search of her mother. A soldier saw her and grabbed her, putting his hand over her mouth. Disbahana tried Disbahana tried to squirm and kick and yell, but it was no use. The soldier tied her up and put her on a horse before they left her home area. The soldiers grabbed several little lambs and tied them in the same way that she was tied. And you said that you think your grandmother was one of the little girls taken?
Yeah, she was. They were released. They were coming back. The youth Indian took her. I was telling
Oh, so she was kidnapped by another tribe.
Yeah, another tribe.
Okay, so remember we
all
talked.
This was there was war everywhere between the white man
and
the other tribe.
Okay, and then on this one it says as Bahana. Bahana, I'm never going to get that right. Traveled eastward with the soldiers. She saw the landscape change many times. She grew more sad and homesick with every change. She saw the sagebrush change to short shrubs. Then she came to an area that was covered with orange sand and many orange mesas. Soon the sagebrush returned, and this Bahana saw many black rocks that formed tall mesas. As they neared Fort Canby, the mesas changed from black to white, and the valley was covered with green vegetation. It was an area different from anything she had ever seen before. If she had not been a captive of these soldiers, she would have thought the valley was very beautiful. Yeah. You want to tell us about some of the pictures?
Fishing, Mutabetini, Hadesa, away, but Ali, Nana, she to be laid over 8, but yeah, that 8 of this late and I don't did say child at the Halala, I don't be 8 and Johnny at the aunt, had that Dana tea 8 dish at honey, it out the Katuakshini, by seed, processing is long. Saw in car.
I wish I understood everything she was saying. When they arrived at Fort Canby, she noticed many of the Navajo children huddled in little groups crying. The children had been kidnapped just as she had been, and they were being used as bait to capture their parents. It was not long before her family was forced to walk to the fort. She was glad to see her family again, but sad because she did not want to see them held as captives. During their stay at Fort Canby, she and her family were given one small meal every day. They were very hungry, and she remembers the way the air smelled when her mother cooked the blue cornbread and wanted more than anything to eat some of that bread dipped in warm goat milk.
Okay. Nana di kwan na shagi ya chini ya jishi han tabet ka. Ado in the cha. Diva mashido bijashi bit anja putalia. Ado tana pas e kwa. Ye nesla. Ado yan shi do bahalo da chini ya. Ado adida pato treasure do treasure bebetchen it la. Akot ashin ya. Ah. Kung that data a mat a class of tahaki.
Okay, before long, the soldiers announced that all of that Navajo prisoners would be forced to walk to Fort Sumner in eastern New Mexico territory, which was 450 miles from their homes. Why are we being forced to walk so far? She cried. My feet and legs hurt. Mother took her hand and held it. When we find some herbs, we will rub your feet and legs with them to make you feel better. Now sing one of the songs we have taught you. It will help the ground move faster under your feet. The journey to Fort Sumner was difficult for all of the Navajo. She saw old people, children, pregnant women walking, putting one foot in front of the other, not knowing where they were being forced to go. Children and some older people cried as they walked. The children cried because they were frightened, and the old ones cried because they did not want to leave the land between their sacred mountains.
Nana di kwan na shagi ya. This is ya handazni skar. Ado ta chato. Fort Sumner live well before ya. Conshe but kado eti ya queen nashing. Ado the tribute ni ram don tal the ni I not so car.
Um, Say her name, please.
This bahane.
This Bahana watched as the old Navajo became sick and fell to the back of the line. The soldiers took the feeble behind a hill and shot them. No proper burial was allowed for those who died. The soldiers pushed away the mourning relatives, forcing them to continue walking. As the girl and her people walked further and further from their homeland, their beloved sacred land faded from view. When Mount Taylor, her sacred mountain of the south, vanished behind her, she vowed that she would never forget the prayers and songs she had learned through the years. She promised herself that she would raise her children back home on the beautiful Black Mesa.
Yeah. Okay, Nana di kwan na shagi ya. Ya. The bedinis kado a coin nashi di. Kini aja ental. Ado pagate. Ya. Ita sashin dorlish. Ado di na paso kongsa. Beta inne. Chini na tao. Ado amma. Ibe wait a lehikin de tate kati de. Ishin coin kati an eti. Oh ya. Ishi bik ita des ancient bisi kati eti. Belton tate iti. Ado shi tahya tateski o ya. Basta ilton to shi aya. Ya.
After they had walked many days, she and her family were hungry and tired and homesick. Their bodies and minds ached. They were almost too tired to walk over a low rise. When they reached it, they saw Fort Sumner spread out below them. She began to cry. Her tears made many marks on her slender, sunburned face.
Nana di kwaje ya. Nana di dashage ya. Ishin ya. Yo ka take kati. Adon te chickens and chickens. Ado the ishin I put that net. It to Ado Fort Sumner the shay ya. Fish dapat at asa ya ya na siya siya ya. Ado di sabahan ne ya ishin itcha. ado penna kesh thodo kana lechene ado shi kopenida ashibata hazame go adaria e chagi benina.
As prisoners of war, the Navajo tried 4 springs to plant crops. The land was not kind. The ground was hard. Although the Pecos River ran through the fort, the water was too alkaline and the crops were choked to death. When the crops did grow a little one year, the worms came and destroyed the tender plants. There were also times when it rained so hard the crops were washed away. When the girl saw her father prepare for planting the 3rd year, she said, "Father, our crops will be destroyed again. Why can't we wait until we get back to Black Mesa before we plant?" "I know the crops will be destroyed," answered Father quietly, "but we plant because we cannot let our children and grandchildren forget our ways. Our children learn many things about the environment through the planting of corn." I love how you're telling us the pictures.
Yeah.
Because the crops failed, her family and the other Navajo had to rely on the troops to provide them with rations. The food given to them was strange to their bodies. Her mother was given dark beans, which she boiled in the bitter river water. No matter how long they boiled the beans, they did not get any softer. Her mother would throw out the water, and then the family would try to eat the beans. Later, they were to learn that the beans were coffee. The other food was no better. The flour was pink and had many dead bugs in it. And the meat that the soldiers called bacon was rotten and smelled horrible. Her mother cooked the bacon anyway because it was the only food they had. There was a time when her brother ate the bacon and nearly died.
Oh. So these people, he caught about one day there's already one of my class aniki. Ade cha ohlie. Ado nana di ki kwai ga se cha do londe la. Ado di kwa di straight la. Nana di cha o di do ado shi di kwa sani se kya na oshe it's called beans. Asian exposure, Asian area, they young. I don't know, can't it and the cheat legend. Asian area, beyond that, she just have nature, lay a can, the house is so. It's Ashi hitcha. Asian area, you sift the flour, then get the bugs out.
Oh, to get the bugs out of it.
Yeah, so that's what they needed to do, but of course, they didn't have that time. Yeah.
One day, she saw some girls and women picking through the corn and oats that was put out for the soldiers' horses. She snuck over to the corral and grabbed 2 handfuls of corn and stuffed them into the sides of her tattered moccasins. A soldier saw her. To punish her, he and some other soldiers took her to the dirty pond and smeared mud all over her face. They laughed as she ran away and spat the mud out of her mouth. It was a humiliating experience, but that evening, as her family ate the corn mixed with the oats, she vowed that she would be brave enough to provide her family with decent food again.
Yeah. Nana ti e ya kwa pa na ha ne ti e chin ke kwa na either pecan or beans. Now what is that? It's in kind steak it up. Other in the ti the corn hat sweet na ka ge jo ya do ya that ti the but at the hallo ti well did a hand of this card that she says with there she at the is ja ado shin ta which now ado ado chi laser sen tabe de no da shi biche ya tio ado hashlish da shi up in ye de le shabi ha de on shin khol ji ado in the ado na ta e ya na ta to na ta su shin e shi shi ja a khot a shin e ya ye biche bitska e shin ya e be ye biche bitska a khot a shin e de sta has laid all shin has not far.
So hard to believe they did this to people.
I know.
While the Navajo were prisoners at Fort Sumner, she reached puberty. Her mother cried soft, bitter tears as she told her that the Navajo were not to hold the Ganada. Is that how you say it? Ganada, the puberty ceremony outside of their sacred land. We can celebrate your Ganada when your time comes, said Mother. I hope we will not be prisoners then. The Navajo will always celebrate the first and second one. I will tell my body to wait until we get home, she said, we will have it there.
Okay, these ladies at Echa, Chia, Nes Nabenache donle, Schlata Benache, Kinalta, and the Ishin Ade, Eke, Dahale, Poshe Diva might be a yaski. Big Punzago, ya, at Edonato, next a deep Hojon, Jehodiaki, lay what a nanny now. Ado na chikun ne ta tin ta e china ta na to ni pesna shi pa ma pa na okay.
She and all of her people could have perished at Fort Sumner, but the children, the clan system, their songs, their prayers helped them to survive extremely desperate times. It was the clan system she brought together with the Navajo, who were once strangers to one another. She found many people who were related to her by clan, and she, her family, and her new relatives began to provide for one another. Together, they gave one another encouragement, courage, and kind words. After 4 long years, the Navajos heard that an important soldier named Sherman was coming to inspect conditions at Fort Sumner. Barboncito, a good friend and brother to the family by clan, was selected by the Navajo to speak for them. The girl watched and listened as her father and other leaders discussed with Barboncito what they wanted him to tell Sherman. When the men were through talking, Barboncito stood up and looked gently into the eyes of the other children. She felt warmth when her eyes met his. Barboncito persuaded Sherman to let the Navajo return to their land between the sacred mountains. The Treaty of 1868 set aside their land and released them from imprisonment on June 1st, 1868. And remember, that's right after the Civil War.
Yeah. Ita chi falagana do as nada hikra ita kaya I hagi bi ako edi de di konspui na zenigation ya le where the holiday the shin ya kundan ji tashin khanda de ni ka da ji tashin kwa haji ya da chi do shin chi da kundan wal ya na shin ji ta ya hajen da hui na ako edi de Fort Sumner holiday where the the shin ya di de balagana Sherman wal ya Asian question not laws for did not be ho ya bet on labor ke ya ha bet on ni chi quite why she bought on the house how she start now auto and the run bit on bet on the auto it cut off hunting not national listing ni chin question Asian Johnny Gishin at rushing oh
She followed her father and mother to the rocky hills near their old home. She watched as her mother removed the large rocks piled against the side of the hill. As more rocks were removed, she could see faded gray designs on a rug that was hidden in a large hole. With great effort, her mother pulled the bundle out and opened it and removed it to reveal a wedding basket, a small bag of rock salt, some jewelry, made of shells and precious stones and several ears of dried blue corn. We are ready to prepare for preparations for your Ganada ceremony, she announced.
Okay. Now na ti khỏe chỗ khó cái xe ya khỏe đi nè. Now na ti hậu hậu anh thật số liệt đi đấy. Chế đấy à. Ê đó sang anh đó chả có đó. Now na ti ê bà hắn này cái khỏe chỗ. Khỏe chỗ này khát đó lấy nó ở đó đấy nè. À đó ti xe nó khỏe xí xe. Ê à chỗ khi in nè khát đó. À đó ti đây chỗ liệt. Ê xe ya. Ê xe ya khỏe đó has lên. Ê lên Ti do ti personality bit ado exaggerin teacher ado and that yote vi nas la at hash etar ya eshin hat hashitat ento hat hashitat la ita eshin hasqui hat hashitan la shen later at hasita kainden le wan yate eshi chata del zendo ta hat hashin ya epic hashin so ade e do nana teachers legislation ya e pa atalia ishin kina station start to e connection da and the just legislation hojon to it all e je kan kina da e pat apa e
Later that evening, she stood alone at the base of Black Mesa and she thought of everything she and her family and all of the Navajo had endured during the past few years. She lifted her head higher. She was proud that she was a Navajo, proud that her people had survived. Wealthy. Their survival would give life to all future generations of the people.
yeah so the kid bahan di ya um di son bahan di shen le just jin de now e ya ba mado bija shi na ka in le ti na khashin le khwel ti de ta ha na de e chi ta jo ne ho des ka zo bi ha shi bi ta shou kai do ta shi de e ya ta sna do ta de e ya bu ke ta sten da ko do di sa ba han na ki e ya e be khwa jo shin de bu ke de ka wa ta ha da cha ko do be khwa jo shin e ya de ta na ta e shin o le Welty it on Johnny it Ada to she to ni Sunday kita to la gana to ana e as ko e ya skine cha she pa han di na so ki ko e ya ade ya aren she ni do hun za e pe kha to ben shi ta ha jo do e ma san ta ni do na ha chen da ni do ado na lo shi do Okay, yeah, to in the chesta ta hazli to ta but in shi khana hon shi e ti shi de khut a ko pa tan shin ne shi ha shin za e ya to na ha to ni sha e ya pen ya e ko ha chen be shi ka okay
And so that is the story of the little woman warrior who came home, told in Navajo and also in English.
yeah
Can we please give Miss Bitsui a hand, please? Now, before I turn off the camera, I wanted to show. I had gone to a museum while I was on vacation, and it talked about the Navajo code talkers, and it was the first time I had ever seen an actual list of the words in Navajo that they used for part of the code system. And if you are new, that they use for part of the code system. So the
yeah
A, how do you say ant?
Walachi
Can you guys say that? Walachi. Okay.
there's so many volatility. There's red ants, black ants, and there's yellow ants. And then some that fly. So yeah,
So when you look at the Navajo, for the Navajo code talkers in World War II, remember, this story happened right after the Civil War. And yet the Navajo were put onto reservations where they were told they had to stay in these boundaries. So were the other tribes. They were also put into schools, and they were told they were not allowed to do several things. What were some of the things they were told they were not allowed to do? Say again? Speak Navajo. They weren't allowed to speak Navajo. They weren't allowed to dress in their costumes. And yet, World War II comes around in 1940, and all of a sudden, what do they need the Navajo to be able to do? Speak Navajo. And so it is very, very unusual because it's not very many people learn Navajo anymore, do they?
That's the younger generation.
And it's very difficult because, like, if Sakara does not learn it, if Nehemiah doesn't learn it, then they can't teach it to their children. So Sakara, you need to learn this because you can't let this language die. You've got to, because it kind of really touches me because that's the culture I grew up with. Does that make sense? And I can't understand it. It's so, you hear all those words. Now, did you notice that when Mrs. Bitsui was reading, she was mainly telling the story of the pictures?
Yeah.
The reason is that Navajo is a storytelling language. It's not so much of a written language. But it is written.
Yeah, it is written, but some of these Navajo words are in here.
Uh-huh.
They're whoever made the story is kind of not the right way to say it. But the way I see it, the way I see the picture,
that's what you were explaining.
That's what I was
And my heart wishes I could understand the words when she was pointing different things so that I could understand what that was. So we are just so grateful to have you here to do this, and that I can put this on video, and I will make sure to get you a copy of this. And can we please just give Miss Bitsui another hand for that, please? And Bradley, will you please find the